On the first day, Pam, Percy, Peter, and Peyton played together, as most children do. Swapping stories, telling secrets, picnicking in the park. They were naive and innocent. Peyton loved Pam, of course, but wanted to play with Peter. Peter was often preoccupied. Hand against cheek. Peyton grew jealous of her friend's affections. As the fog rolled in, they packed up their things and left the park behind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Robert Evans.
On the second day, their radios bore grim news of the world.
Early this morning, southwest London was bombed by the Nazis.
They packed their bags.
Is planning a mass evacuation of citizens, since it looks as though this battle has only just begun.
Before the children fled to safety.
Are working tirelessly to protect our home from the threat of full-blown.
The day grew grim and cold as they trudged through the forest. And so, Pam, Percy, Peter, and Peyton made their way to the cabin in the woods. It was a dreary place, covered in dust and grime, but safer than home. The children unpacked what few things they had, in a useless attempt to make something seem familiar. That night was restless for all. The wind sounded like howling, and the house creaked as if it were a living creature. Peyton dreamt of a stranger in a dark coat, his face covered by the brim of his hat. He held out his hand and told her that he could take her far away, but only if she was alone. The offer was tempting, but the girl refused. The stranger said he would be waiting. On the third day, the shack seemed smaller than before, cramped, but not cozy, at least, not for some. They cleaned by the stream while Percy gathered kindling. The girls dressed their dolls and played together after the chores were finished. Peyton wondered for a moment where the boys had run off to. Pam said that Peter was at the stream while Percy tended to the garden. She lied. Their smiles made Peyton's blood boil. That afternoon, they went for a walk. Peyton was worried for her friends.
Perhaps,
said Peyton to her dear friend Pam.
we should do something. It can't be safe for them out there. I'm only concerned for their health.
Pam turned to face her.
I don't understand
Pam said slowly.
why you worry so often about our friends. Peter and Percy can take care of themselves.
God knows Peter needs a break from you constantly obsessing over his every move.
She wasn't quite out of earshot. That night, Peyton dreamt of the man again. But this time, she took his offer. On the fourth day, Pam's bed was cold and empty. The children spoke in hushed voices about her disappearance. The wind was harsh, however, and the days were short and cold. The dangers that came with leaving were far too great. They hoped that their dear friend would be back shortly. It was a solemn day. That evening, Percy and Peter sat together on the front step. They talked about all sorts of things. For the first time, it felt like home. On the fifth day, Peter and Peyton were the only two left. Peyton gave Peter a moment to mourn alone. It was then that he found a letter. Scrawled in shaky black ink were 4 words. You have till morning. The river ran red, and it was then that he knew. That night he stared into the eyes of the friend he knew so well, and nothing stared back.
I know what you did.
The boy said, his voice shaking. Peyton cocked her head to the side.
Whatever do you mean?
She asked, moving towards him. His eyes widened with fear.
Pam, Percy, Peyton. We both know you're sick. Please, just listen.
He placed his hand on her arm, pleading.
I know you're still in there.
Peyton smiled sadly.
We both know I'm not.
On the 6th day, Peyton waited. The stranger didn't come. She hoped he would keep his promise and come back someday. After all, by morning, she was alone.